Okay, so a while back, I did a video in which I took this G5 that I had picked up, and I was curious to see what I could do with it in terms of putting in a 9th gen i7 9700K processor. And I wanted to see what I could do in terms of would it work, number one. Could I put a K processor in there? How would it handle as far as the heat? What could I do to help disperse the heat? Because in the normal units that have the K processor, they have a heat sink that goes all the way across here. And I only have this normal copper one. I do have the fan for the SATA drive. I was hoping that might help. And I've got the vented hood. So all these things together, and it was good, but boy, it did get hot. It did get hot, and it was a nice sort of science experiment, something to see if it would work. But now I really want to have one that I can use all the time, and one that I don't have to pull out this monstrosity of a power supply. It's 150 watt guy in order to run this thing, because just the CPU alone needs 95 watts. So I wanted to kind of go almost the other extreme of going with a T processor in here. And I wanted to keep costs low, but I didn't want to go too cheap. And I've gone kind of cheap in the past, and I've gone with an i3. And then I found out later that I couldn't do, all the stuff I wanted to do with the V Pro. So I said, okay, I want to go i5. But then I thought, well, do I go 8500, 9500? So in the end, I thought, well, let's see how well an 8500T processor would work in here. An i5 8500T in this G5. And run some benchmarks, etc., and also kind of compare prices. I'll do a segment here where I do show some of the pricing and also some of the comparisons of the processors on the Intel site. But then that way, I'd have something that I could use all the time. I could use my normal 65 watt power supply. People have questions. I don't have to again pull out all those monstrosity. I could probably go back to a normal SATA enclosure. These are nice with the fan, but they're kind of a pain when you're taking them in and out, and you got to unplug and so forth. So that's another thing. I got to look through my stash of stuff to see if I have a normal caddy that I can throw in there. I probably do, because I don't know if this came with the original one. I probably did, since I believe the original I thought was a 65 watt to start out with. So anyway, we're going to go with that. We'll take out the old processor, put in the new. One of the things I want to do is upgrade the BIOS. We're going to take out the old processor, clean this guy up, and again, I'm going to look through my stash, see if I have a heat sink that, maybe just the normal aluminum one, because again, I'm using a T processor. This might be a little overkill for it. So I thought I'd show you kind of a comparison between sort of the three CPUs. The original one, which was the i7 9700K, and then the kind of my two candidates, either the i5 9500T or the i5 8500T, which are supposed to work with the EliteDesk 800 G5 Mini. Obviously, the i7 9700K is going to have a little more spec or better specs. You got 8 core versus 6 for the others. Although you are looking at quite a difference as far as power draw, 95 watts versus 35 watts. Everything else, a lot of it is the same in terms of like speed of the memory types. There's a little difference, let's see, in overall, where is that? Here you've got 4.9 gigahertz in turbo. Base frequency is obviously higher. It would make sense that it would be a beefier one. But if you're comparing the 95 to 85, it's negligible as far as the difference is. They both support the, where is it? They're all vPro. They all have virtualization, all the kind of standard stuff that you need. So then if we look at or compare pricing on eBay between the 9500 and the 8500, you'll see that the 9500, I mean, I see as low as 30, but you know, I like to kind of look at the general overview of pricing. I'm seeing probably more in the $40 range for the 9500T. If we go to the 8500, oh, probably more, maybe in the $32 range, something like that. So it's not a huge price differential between the two. I happened to make an offer on one, and they took it up, and I got it for 20. So mileage may vary. So it just kind of depends on what you can do. You might have better luck with wheeling and dealing on an 8500 versus a 9500, since it is a 8th gen versus 9th gen. All right, I had to go back and look when I first bought this G5. I guess it was a bare bones, but it did come with the heat sink and the fan. And I looked through my collection of stuff, and it looks like I do have an extra caddy that is the non-fan. So I'm going to replace that first. All right. Got to disconnect the fan. I think this one, oh, interesting. It doesn't have a SATA connector anyway. Interesting. I don't know why I didn't notice that before. Okay. All right. I think I've got to take this out. And I wonder if it's like the G3 where you have to take the fan in order to get to the other screw. I don't think so. Oh, never mind. It comes right out. I was just not using enough force there. Okay, let's put this back in. Well, this is probably good that I'm replacing it anyway, because I do want the SATA connector. I must have probably trying to use this fully just as a fan without anything covering it. And who knows, maybe I mentioned that in the video, but so I'm using the SSD to boot from. Interesting. Okay. Oh, well, I guess I could continue to use this to boot from, but I still like the caddy, so I'll put that back in. But we'll put that back in after we get everything, you know, put back in, so to speak. So, okay. Move this out of the way. And we'll just keep the copper, even though it's, you know, being used with the T processor, not a big deal. You know, it's extra cooling. Here's our processor. And let's see if you can see that. There's our new guy, i5 8500T. I'm sure I'm going to get thermal paste on my finger somewhere. And here's your arrow, and there's your arrow. Okay, I'm going to get some isopropyl, clean this guy up, and then we'll put new paste on this guy. Okay, we're back, nice and shiny clean here. It was on so tight, I had to use needle nose. Okay. Good size blob there. And it's kind of nice. I think this was a pretty new unit because these pads here are pretty fresh, so that helps too. Okay. Okay, put the fan back. All right, we'll put this guy back on. I think I've lost some of the screws along the way. Let's see. Oh, no. There, the screws are... These guys are right in here. Okay, I'm going to take this off because it's going to be easier putting it on or getting it back into the that connector. What you do with this little plastic, we've never had to put them back on, but see, it's slightly raised. Okay, then you stick it in. Get that in there as that deep in there, and then kind of push on the sides. Check the work. Yeah. And you'll know, because if you try to use it and it doesn't work, then you need to put it in again. These do go bad, unfortunately, if you use them a lot. I'm sort of glad that it does have a bootable SSD in here, because I can use that to update the secure boot certificates on, as part of the BIOS and such, because otherwise I ended up, what I had to do on some of my other units was take an existing old Windows 11 that hadn't gone through all the updating, put that onto an SSD, and then load it. Anyway, it's a lot of extra work, but I already have it here, so that's going to work well. So let me go put this cable back on here. Okay. Looks like we've got everything. Still need to find another thumb screw on this guy. That was the one thing that was missing on it. Okay, now we can hook up normal power to it. And let's see what we get here. Okay. I'm going to plug in my network cable. All right, so what I'm hoping to do is start it up and get into the BIOS so that I can update it. All right, let's apply power. Oh. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to look that guy up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Well, the 3 long, 4 short is a power issue. So it's kind of strange because this is a T processor, but I'm going to plug in a 90-watt power supply and see what happens. Okay. That would be weird. Why? Maybe the system thinks because we bought a 65-watt unit that it requires it. All right. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is just weird. Okay, this is getting odd. So unless it's some weirdness with the CPU, I'm going to try my 150-watt one. Maybe something in the BIOS thinks that it's still using that old processor and needs to reset somehow. So, okay. Let's see what happens. Well, it's running. No I don't have any video yet. Let's see. Let me see if, oh, well, no, I've got video. Well, it's booting into Windows. Okay, we'll try this again so we could get into the firmware. Okay, so we're inside of Windows. Let's check some stuff to see, what it thinks is going on in terms of the CPU and all that sort of thing. Okay, so task. Okay, well, at least it reported the right one. Yeah, virtualization, so forth, memory. Okay, I'm going to have it boot into the BIOS. I have a feeling, well, actually, I'm thinking I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to hit the CMOS reset button and see if that will make it so I can go back to using my normal 65-watt power supply. All right, well, let's see if we can find that CMOS reset. Okay, should be. I think it's this guy. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Put it back on and we'll try the normal one and see if we can get. Now let's see. Moment of truth. No? Okay. Well, we'll put back in the normal. Maybe we'll go into BIOS. Maybe we'll do an upgrade. Maybe we'll clear it out. Okay, doing the CMOS reset didn't seem to work. So I'm going to see if I can get into the BIOS. I was having some issues. I wasn't, I don't know, maybe hitting it the right time. So one little hack you can do is if you go in, look for the command prompt and run as admin, and then type in shutdown /R/FW. That will force it to go into the BIOS, the startup menu. Sometimes you have to run this twice because you'll get some weird error. Let's see what happens. Nope, it actually did this time. Okay, close. And it takes it about, 30 seconds, and then it will reboot. Okay, let's go into the BIOS setup. Let's just see what it thinks. Okay, it does think it's 8500T. And I want to do an update of the system BIOS. I don't know how, oh, that looks pretty old. Let's see. Weird, never had it reboot. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's fine. I guess it's just doing a little rollback. Update. Okay, let's update to 2026. One of the reasons sometimes you also want to update, especially if you're trying to fix the secure boot certificates, is just make sure you got the latest and greatest from HP. I'm kind of hoping this is going to clean some stuff out too. I mean, my other option, of course, is to remove the CMOS battery and let it sit for a little bit and see if that resets. Just weird. I've never had this do this where it, it's usually the reverse in a way where you put in a chip that needs more power and it says, hey, I can't function because, but this is a T processor. It's at, 35 watt, unless, of course, this is a mislabeled processor. But I don't think so. It's too coincidental that it needed the 150 watt, just like the old processor. So something's holding on to that need or setting. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is going to work because I just tried it with the 90 watt power supply and it booted. It didn't give the error. So let's try the 65 watt. So this is after doing the whole BIOS upgrade and everything, which is kind of weird, but who knows, maybe that's what it needed to kind of clear itself. Oh, well, okay. It doesn't like the 65 watt. Okay. All right, let's put the 90 watt back. I could have sworn I tested this. Just let's see. Okay, the 90 watt is working. Go figure. Okay. I mean, it is, I guess, the native power supply for the 65 watt unit, but I know I've got 65 watt units that are running the non-T processor. Maybe that's on the G3. Maybe with the G4, it's pickier or something. But I'm going to keep trying. In the meantime, let's go into Windows and maybe we can try some benchmarks. Okay, so we're in Windows. We're using our 90 watt power supply. And let's run Geekbench and see what kind of numbers we get from it. And we can compare it to some of our other systems. Okay, so we've run Geekbench. Here are results. Right here, you've got the G5 using the 8500T, a single core, multi-core. If we put that, let's see, let's go in order by multi-core. So here's this guy. Here's a 9500 G5. That's a good comparison. Slightly better numbers, but not dramatically. I mean, this could just, just a small amount. If we look at, here's what the same machine, when it was running with the 9700K, yeah, quite a difference, obviously, about almost 50%, well, maybe 40% faster in both setup, but definitely on the multi-core. Let's see if we have, here's a G4 that's running an 8500, and here's a G4 running an 8600 for this one, 8500 for that one. Interesting. They're a little bit slower, even though they're using the same processor. Just a bit. Yeah, not a huge amount, but still interesting that the G5 is a little better. Here's a 65 watt G4. Oh, but that's an i3, so that's not a good comparison. But anyway, it kind of gives you an idea of 8500 versus 9500 as an example. What I'm very curious now is I'm going to turn it off. I want to plug in the kilowatt. I want to try a heavy load, and I'm just curious to see, is the system somehow using more wattage? Why is it thinking that it needs this 90 watt power supply? All right, we're going to run heavy load. It did shoot up to almost 58 watts. So I don't know if we've got a mislabeled CPU or if the unit itself is just using a lot of extra juice. Yeah, we're staying consistent at about 54 watts. That's quite a bit. That's not normal. I'm going to see if I can bring up hardware info and see if we can see some of the thermals. All right, well, let's see, core temperatures. Yeah, that's pretty warm. Not too bad. I'm used to seeing sometimes in the 80s and so forth. So 74 is not too bad. It's staying, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Fan is not incredibly loud, and we are staying at around 53, 54 watts. We'll let this run for 5 minutes and see what happens. Okay, well, we're past the 5-minute mark. Looks like it's around 80 degrees, give or take, as far as the high. Power is around 54, so I'm going to stop it and see what happens to the power and the temperature. Well, right away it dropped to below 10 watts. It's like almost maybe 7, 8. So that's pretty dramatic. And you see the temperature dropping down pretty rapidly too. I don't know. Is this with the G5 65 watt when you buy them, even if you put in a T processor, it still is doing something as far as maybe trying to get the most out of it or something by running it with the higher temp, or and it's going to be the higher power. I'm going to still tinker with this because I would prefer not to have to use the 90 watt if I can get by with it. But if when it's on full load it's at 55 watts, that's pretty high. I mean, you're only 10 watts away from the full capacity of the power supply. So maybe it is just a built-in thing to do with it. If I don't find a solution, if people have suggestions or comments, let me know. But again, I think it's a viable thing. I guess if I had a normal, 35 watt unit, yeah, I would go with the 8500T without a problem. So we'll kind of see how it goes with this. If not, at least I went from that giant 150 watt down to a 90 watt. So just as a little epilogue to all of this, I went in and into the BIOS, I went into system options, and this was turned on, turbo boost. When I turned it off and then went in and ran heavy load, the amount of the wattage pulled went from 50 on average of 55 down to about an average of 38. And the temps were much better. I mean, I was getting probably more like in the 50s, that where before I was getting in low 80s, high 70s. Unfortunately, that still didn't allow me to use a 65 watt power supply.